Parak Dalet, Mishnah Dalet. B'chol Yom, throughout the year, apart from Yom HaKippurim, Hoya Choyse B'shal Kesef. The Kohen who won the privilege of scooping up the coal for the Keteris, for the daily Keteris, Hoya Choyse B'shal Kesef. He would scoop up with a shovel made out of silver, Uma'ara, and then he would take that coal which he scooped up and he would pour it B'teich Shal Zahav into a shovel of gold. And today on Yom HaKippurim, he would actually use a silver one, in other words, throughout the year, in order to save Al Momen Shal Yisrael, if he would use a gold one to scoop up with, it would roughen up the golden shovel. It would dirty and spoil and rub away the gold on the shovel. So rather what he did was, he would use a silver shovel, and then he would pour that into a golden shovel, and then he would do the Keteris. But today on Yom Kippur, we're trying to reduce the amount of effort that the Kohen Gadol has to put in, because he's got an enormous amount to do today. So therefore, to minimize his exertion, we don't trouble him to actually take it up to scoop it up with a silver shovel and then pour it into a gold shovel. We minimize it and we allow him just to take the gold shovel, to scoop it up and to directly walk into the Kodesh, into the Heichal, with that shovel. That's what it means. Continues the Mishnah. B'chol yom, every day, chayse b'shel abas kabin u'ma'ara b'teich shel shloishes kabin. All year round, on all days of the year apart from Yom HaKippurim, he would scoop up the coals with a shovel which held arba kavim. The Kahati says that a kav is approximately 2 liters. And then he would pour it into the smaller shovel, which was shal shloishes kavim. And of course there would be an overspill of 1 kav, that would spill to the ground, but it was considered derech kavod, it was considered an honorable way of doing it, that it was sort of full to overflowing. And that's considered an honorable way of doing things. However, for Hayoim today, b'shal shloishes kavin u'bohir machnis, he would use a shovel which is held 3 kav, and then he would just walk in directly with that. Again, to try and relieve the amount of effort needed by the Kohen Gadol, to minimize his exertion. Rabbi Yossi says, B'chol yom chayse b'shal sa'ah. He argues with the measurements of the Tanna Kama, and he says that all year round they would use a shovel which held a sa'ah. A sa'ah holds 6 kav. So as opposed to the Tanna Kama who said that they would scoop up with a shovel which held 4 kav, and then would transfer onto a smaller shovel which held 3, and there would be an overspill of about 1 kav. Rabbi Yossi held that they would scoop up with a much bigger shovel which held a sa'ah which was 6 kav. And he would agree that would be poured into a smaller shovel which held 3, but of course there'd be an overspill of 3 kav. So that was the machlokus Rabbi Yossi and the Tanna Kama as to what the initial shovel held. But they both agree, Rabbi Yossi would agree that he would pour that into a smaller shovel which held 3 kav. But today on Yom Kippur he would agree with the Tanna Kama that you would just use the single shovel to scoop up, the gold shovel, and that held 3 kav, and he would walk in, he would bring in the coals with that shovel. Next difference between Yom Kippur and the rest of the year. B'chol yom, all year round, hoyse kaveda. The Bartanura says, hoyse kaveda shoyse doifna avo. The thickness of the shovel, the thickness of the material was heavy, because it was a very thick material. V'hayom kala, but on Yom Kippur, we again, to try and minimize the exertion of the Kohen Gadol, we use a thinner metal so it shouldn't be so heavy. B'chol yom, all year round, hoyse yoda katzara, the handle of the shovel was short. V'hayom aruka, but today it was longer. Again, the reason is that when you have a short handle, it's much harder to hold. But if you've got a longer handle, he can sort of rest it between his arm and his body, and therefore he can hold it as well, but it just sort of it reduces the amount of effort needed to carry it. Divrei Rabbi Nachman. These are the words of Rabbi Menachem. B'chol yom, all year round, makrif pros b'shachris or pros bein ha'arbayim. He would offer up the Keteris a half measure in the morning and a half measure in the afternoon. V'hayom, today on Yom Kippur, there was a 3rd Keteris. In addition to the daily Keteris, where he would offer up a pras in the morning and a pras in the afternoon, he would additionally be meisif melech hofnov, which, as we will describe in Mitzvah later, he would take two handfuls, two sort of cupped handfuls, and he would bring that would be the third Keturis. B'chol yom, all year round, hoisadaka, the actual Keturis, the actual incense that was going to be burnt, was very thin. V'hayoim daka min adaka, but today on Yom Kippur, it would be super thin. Now, why is that? So the Baratanura from the Gemara in Memhei Omad Aleph in Yomא tells us the following. Dichsiv, because the Pasuk says in Vayikra Tezayin, U'meloi chafnav Keturis samim daka. On Yom Kippur, you've got to bring in the Keturis, which is daka, which is thin. Ask the Gemara, Ma Talmud Loima, what does the Torah need to tell me this for? It already says in Shemais, describing the daily avoda of a Kohen in the Beis HaMikdash, V'shachakta mimenu hadak. We have already described the Keturis to be dak. So why does the avoda on Yom Kippur, the Pasuk in Vayikra, have to repeat and tell me that it's got to be dak? To teach us, it should be super thin. So the extra repetition of daka in Vayikra Tezayin teaches me that the incense, the Keturis, burnt on Yom Kippur has got to be super thin, super fine. That is the end of Mishnah Dalet.